Hi, my name is Peggy Halevi, and I am a great appreciator. Years ago now, I was inspired to become a great appreciator, and in that inspiration, I was further inspired to write a book. The name of the book is The Art of Appreciation, and now I would like to read a very small portion, yet one of my favorite selections from the very last chapter of the book, which is called Appreciating Death, Everlasting Life. This segment of the reading is speaking about the way in which I communicate with my inner being, and I so love that it is the completion of the book because it is such a special uniting of myself and the book for the reader. I hope you appreciate hearing it, and I hope you find the way in which you hear your voice within you. In what most certainly feels to me as a heightened state of life, and while experiencing the art of appreciating, I brought to my inner being questions about death and everlasting life, wanting to avail that insight into this book. I will describe the encounter by first mentioning that this reaching out and being in the connecting space that I share with my inner being is mutually consented to. Yet I am always excited about the space in which I enter into while the communications are returning from non-physical to physical. It is very enriching. I often sense being there in an altered time-space reality, and my senses are increased in many ways, and simultaneously this absorbing, slowed down state can seemingly fog up my sight slightly and somewhat animate my penmanship. It is not spooky or anything. I definitely do not sense any possession of me. I allow connection. During this time, I am equally inserted, and not as an invader, into my inner being space. It is a mutuality. It is a shared space of appreciation. In this communication, I was bringing forth more in my vibrations than the words I used to frame the question, which I knew would commence a purposeful communication. And the answers are of more than the question per se. I enjoy mental communications, however, I am totally appreciating written communications between my inner being and myself. Mentally, there is so much given to me at an instant that I am, although comprehending the messages, stunned with it all. I prefer that once the communication is commenced, that I request that I write it down. This request is honored. I feel so much more comfortable in knowing that the messages will be parsed at the speed in which I can write, so I can absorb them better in comparison from the mental downloads that seem to flood me with a stillness from being almost frozen from the immensity of the thoughts that are provided, as if in huge blocks of comprehension. I am a slow reader naturally, and I enjoy reading slowly also. Words to me are so rich with meaning that as I create them slowly from my mind out, or from written words in, either way, I love feeling that I understand the words, and the placement of those words before me. The structure of a sentence is of interest to me, and each word is to me an entity unto itself, with space between them. So I read slowly so I can appreciate the meaning of these words strung together. My reading slowly allows me to comprehend words and sentences fully. I hardly ever, although sometimes do, move on to a new sentence while reading, whereby I did not understand it completely, although often I reread until I do understand. Some things I accept that I may not understand, yet when I read and write slowly, I follow thoughts better. So, when I asked a question of my inner being recently of what should I write to express better the concepts of death and everlasting life, it answered much more. I would like to share what I can of this experience with you because it is profoundly beautiful to me, and I think it will assist especially those who have a strong Christian or Catholic foundation. I agreed to write the following words into this book. I am here, holding us together in this now place of this art of appreciation. It is a sacrament, as you understand those to be. They are beginnings, are they not to you? And they are a continuation. Are you hearing? This communication had to do with explaining our connection and also was starting to connect to my comprehension of death and everlasting life. It continues. Be open to the news I bring. Be open here. We want you to hear. Place a thought upon a thing. I did. Okay. The tip of the pen does very well. It symbolizes the place in which at this very moment we connect to each other. Do you see that? I answered mentally, yes, I do. And do you feel that? Again, I answered yes, and I did feel it. I felt the animation of my pen and a soft confidence in the flow of my penmanship without personal intent. The words had a depth of meaning far greater than what they are as they appeared before me on the paper. It is the same as in the experience you call death. Death is like the tip of our communications. It is the invisible connection between this dimension of physical humanity and the returning to larger self. I will note here that when the words invisible connection were being written, they were almost invisible to see. That is an example of the amazing multi-directional communications that I am encountering between the words being given and written. I'll continue. It, meaning death, is not as you sometimes reflect in thought as the ending nor the beginning. It is rather the throughway, the doorway, the way, not the end or the beginning. I am sensing the desire from my inner being to clarify my growing understanding from these words brought to me to be placed into this book. In so doing, I first want to remind myself of what a sacrament is. My favorite definition of a sacrament is an outward sign of an inward grace. That is exactly what I experience putting the inward messages into outward practice. Sacraments are celebrations of God's gifts and gracious actions in our lives. Sacraments are chosen instruments of divine power. I sensed in the flood of perceptions that my inner being was telling me of, that it was a sacrament, that we were able to connect at the tip of a pen, and that physical death itself is a sacrament.